This is it's not really a presentation, but rather than a sharing. We're going to talk about IT in education in the next 10 years. But before that, we really want to look forward for the 10 years, the next 10 years, but rather than let us just stand here and look back for what happened for the last 10 years. So now I'm going to lead you, Nancy and I were going to lead you in particular. In my part, I will show what happened in particular in terms of policy changes in the last 10 years in Hong Kong. And then Nancy will give you more idea about what really happened in terms of implementation in schools. Okay. Now this is an overview. So then here just the overview of this session about review the policy changes, and then Nancy will present research findings on IT in education developments in Hong Kong, and then we have some discussion what impacts has IT in education policy make, and what should be the policy priority given the research findings. Okay, let's start. I will use about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes to just do something like to trace the policy changes in ICT in education in Hong Kong since 1998. Okay. Now this is a quotation. This is a particular link. What I'm going to present about the policy. Of course, when we talk about why you talk about policy changes, of course, we don't need to argue. It is very important. But this quotation shows another dimension, policy and what we call the macro and meso implementation in schools, the link between them. So then I'm not going to read this out, rather than you can read it by yourself. How administration and also the policy, how this link. Okay. Now, in Hong Kong, starting from 1998, we have the first policy paper called Information Technology for Learning in a New Era, and then the second one in year 2004. And then the most recent one will be year 2008. The final one will be, I would like to read this title because I think this is a very interesting title. Right technology at the right time for the right task. So this is very interesting. Anyway, I will discuss this one by one. Now, how to understand policy changes? Now here I just list 5 dimensions I'm going to explore and talk about it. Now the first we want to talk about is the policy context. This is important. What are the contexts? Then the second we'll look at problem analysis. How the government, how the policy reflects the problem. Why bother? Why bother? Why we use a lot of money and we invest in IT in education? What are the problems? And then the third, we will compare this 3 policy paper. What is ICT in education? In particular, we'll look at that. And then we'll talk about the vision. This is important. And also policy goals. We will have a kind of comparison of the 3 documents. First of all, if we look at the first paper that is more than 10 years ago, released in 1998, the policy context of that is Hong Kong in 1997. You know, Hong Kong, after the handover, we have our very first chief executive, Mr. Tong. So this is more related. I extract from the policy paper. And then it started with the IT initiative in the chief executive policy address in 1997. If you look at that, that is about a leader, not a follower in the information world of tomorrow, and blah, blah, blah. You can read it. And then the second thing in this context is about an exponential growth in use of ICT. This is what really happened. And also then we talk about many economies, other than Hong Kong, of course, that they have all the implementation and implement the plan for ICT in education. Now this is started with more like economic situation linked to certain political agenda in particular for that. So this is the first context of this document. Now if you look at the second document, it's a little bit different. The second document, in the document, then you will see that we started with the rapid evolution of that knowledge-oriented economy. So this is the context of the second policy paper. And then we'll talk about some new patterns can be, particularly in terms of pedagogical practices, so it are observable in education, because already done something in this particular couple of years after the first paper produced. In particular, this policy paper linked to the idea of curriculum reform and also build on the achievements made under the 5-year strategy. Now, the third paper, policy context, if you look at the paper, it's a bit different because unlike the second one, it started right in the beginning of the policy paper, talk about the promise of information technology. And then they go straight away and talk about the technological trends. So that is the context. Now later on we'll talk about how this policy paper analyzes the problem, what really happened. So let us look at this. Now, the problem analysis in 1998, in the first paper, I will see this is more like a responsive analysis because we need to, you like it or not, we need to make a response to respond to this. So that's why we have this kind of changes and development. So that is the way how the report or the policy paper reflected. And then they wanted, hey, look, we need to respond to these changes, and then we need to change anyway. And then they create a terminology called paradigm shift in this particular policy document. In the second paper, the problem analysis is a little bit different. Now, you are quite familiar with this kind of box. You know what, this is more like a SWOT. You know what is SWOT. But in the paper, of course, they don't use the terminological SWOT. They don't use a box like that. I put it all together. But you can find all these topics and sessions, they're clearly stated in the document. So that's why I will see how the second policy paper analyze the situation or the problem. We'll be using like a SWOT-like analysis. So then the problem is we're looking at what have we achieved, what have proved working, and looking at the barriers and opportunities. So that's why it's more focused on the analysis, writing on what we have achieved, and then focus on sustainable development of ICT in education. So this is how they analyze the problem. In the third document or the third policy paper, how they analyze the problem, and then they use a very, I would say, a linear thought. What is linear? That means when you started in the document, you talk about the technological trends points to emergence of a new learning environment. That is A cause B, is quite clear. And taking this into account, then you just to look, we have to do one particular thing. This is the way that they analyze the problem. To strengthen the push factor, reducing the pull factor.